Welcome to the Forward Exam Accessibility Training. Today, we will be discussing accessibility options available for the exam, how to use the features, and guidelines for their use. This training is meant to be a supplement to the accessibility guide. Always refer to the guide for clarification about an accessibility feature. If you still have questions, please contact the Office of Student Assessment. State and federal law require that state assessments allow for the inclusion of all students. Accommodations and designated supports are intended to reduce the effects of a student's disability or level of language acquisition. Accessibility features do not reduce learning expectations or change what is being measured by the test. Designated supports are available to any student who has a need for them. The decision to provide a designated support should be determined by educators. A designated support should only be provided if it is used as part of the student's regular classroom instruction. These features are available to students with or without an IEP or a 504 plan. In comparison to designated supports, accommodations are available only to students whose need is documented in an IEP or 504 plan and who use the accommodation as part of their classroom instruction. It is important to only provide supports when there is a need. Providing designated supports or accommodations can be stressful for a student who does not normally use these accessibility features on a regular basis. Too many accessibility features can be a distraction for the student rather than a support during testing. Keep this in mind when assigning designated supports and accommodations for your students. The District Assessment Coordinator must enter a student's approved accessibility features into the testing management portal called eDirect prior to printing test tickets. Test tickets will have an abbreviation next to the word accommodations on the student's ticket if the accommodation or support was entered prior to printing the ticket. If it is on the ticket, the support will be available during testing. If test tickets are printed prior to having these supports entered into eDirect, they will not have an abbreviation next to the word accommodations on the test ticket, and these supports will not be available to the student during testing. Test administrators need to confirm that students have access to the designated supports and accommodations assigned to them before the student starts the test. Again, the accessibility features will be listed as codes on the student's test ticket. The Accessibility Guide and the Test Administration Manual identify each code. A copy of the Test Administration Manual and the Accessibility Guide should be available in the testing room for administrators to use as a reference. Failure to confirm that a student has the needed supports before they start testing could result in the invalidation of their test. Check with each student during the test directions portion of the test before students click the Begin Testing button to ensure that the accessibility features are working. Now we will review the embedded designated supports. Color choices. The background color changes according to the color selected without changing the color of the text, the graphics, or the response areas. Students with attention difficulties, visual impairments, or other print disabilities may benefit from this support. Color supports should be informed by evidence that color selections meet the student's needs. Contrasting color. Using color combinations that are in opposite positions on the color wheel, the font and background colors change according to the combination selected. Color supports, again, should be informed by evidence that these color selections meet the student's needs. So instead of having a white screen with black lettering and graphics, you could have an orange screen with blue lettering and graphics. Reverse contrast. All colors on the test page are displayed in the reverse order. Students with attention difficulties, visual impairments, or other print disabilities may benefit from this support. Masking. This allows the student to cover up or mask content that may be distracting, enabling the student to more easily focus their attention on a specific part of the screen. Masking areas are resizable and movable on the page. Stacked Translation. Spanish Stacked Translation is available for math, science, and social studies. For English Language Arts, it is only available for the test directions. This support is for students whose primary language is Spanish and who use dual language supports in the classroom. The student will see the content, test directions, the question, the answer choices, in Spanish, with that same content also in English, stacked directly below it. Stacked Translation is available in the online tools training, and students can practice using it. The text-to-speech designated support is intended only for students who are struggling readers, who may need assistance accessing the assessment, or for students with reading-related disabilities. Students should use a similar support on a regular basis in the classroom. Allowing text-to-speech for every student is not a proper use of this support. Students who use text-to-speech will need headphones unless they are being tested individually in a separate setting. Text-to-speech designated support should be used for all students requiring TTS, including students who have IEP or 504 plans. Students are able to adjust the speed of the reader and the volume at any time during the test. Keep in mind that assigning text-to-speech to a student who is unfamiliar with it or does not really need it can provide added stress to the student and affect their thought processes. This can actually cause more of a distraction or a source of frustration than it does to assist them. Now we will discuss non-embedded designated supports. Amplification devices. Students who are hard of hearing may use amplification assistive technology, such as an FM system, to increase the volume provided in the assessment system. Use of this resource may require a separate setting. If the device has additional features that may compromise the validity of the test, such as internet access, the additional functionality must be deactivated to maintain test security. Word-to-word bilingual dictionaries. A word-to-word bilingual dictionary may be provided as a designated support. Definitions for words are not included in these dictionaries. Color overlay. This is when a transparent colored sheet is placed over a page of text or is affixed to the computer screen. This can provide assistance to students who normally use this type of support when reading to reduce visual stress. Magnification. Students accustomed to viewing enlarged text or graphics or navigation buttons may need magnification to comfortably view content. This support may also meet the needs of students with visual impairments and other print disabilities. Third-party screen magnification software, such as Magic or Zoom Text, may lead to some pixelation at high magnification levels due to the way magnification is achieved by the third-party software. Do not activate screen readers if using third-party screen magnification, as they are not compatible. Noise buffers. A student may wear equipment to reduce environmental noises if they use these devices regularly in the classroom. Students who use white noise also fall into this category and will need headphones unless they are tested individually in a separate setting. Read aloud in English. Read aloud by a human is allowed as a designated support for all grades in math, science, social studies, and most of English language arts. It is not allowed for the English Language Arts Session 4 reading comprehension passages. It should be provided only in the English language and is intended only for students who are struggling readers who may need assistance accessing the assessment, or students with reading-related disabilities. Students should use a similar support on a regular basis in the classroom. Students receiving a read aloud support will need to be tested individually in a separate setting. Please note that text-to-speech and read aloud are mutually exclusive supports. They essentially do the same thing. Text-to-speech is the computer reading the test aloud. Read aloud is a human reading the test aloud. You may not assign both supports to a student. Read aloud is also available in Spanish. It allows a student to hear Spanish translation test information displayed on the screen, read to them by a qualified human reader in Spanish. Words and numbers, test directions, questions, answer choices, and other information is read aloud in Spanish by a human reader and can be repeated if necessary. This designated support should be used in conjunction with the stacked Spanish translation if reading aloud is necessary. A scribe. Students who have a significant motor disability, processing difficulties, or who have had a recent injury, such as a broken arm, that make it difficult to provide responses, may need to dictate their responses to a human, who then records the student's responses. Translators who scribe student responses from a native language to English should translate word for word to the extent possible for all content areas except text-dependent analysis. The text-dependent analysis must be dictated and scribed in English. The text-dependent analysis item measures composition, grammar, punctuation, capitalization, spelling, as well as citing evidence and the use of textual support. Therefore, a student must dictate their response exactly as it is to be written. Scribing guidelines are available in the Forward Exam Accommodations and Support webpage. Note that the use of a scribe can be stressful to a student who does not normally use this support, especially during the text-dependent analysis. Discuss the scribing process with the student ahead of time, as some students may opt to go without. Separate settings. These should be used and apply to any students who need read aloud, a translation, or any other accessibility features that may be a distraction to other students. This may also apply to any student you know may act out or cause distractions to other students during testing. These students should be tested in a separate room. Small group translation. This support allows a translator-interpreter to read the test aloud to a small group of students at the same time. This is, of course, done in a separate setting. Translator-interpreters. Translators or interpreters are available as a language support for languages other than Spanish and may be provided for mathematics, science, and social studies assessments. For ELA assessments, only the test directions may be translated/interpreted. Embedded accommodations. Video sign language is available as an embedded accommodation. Students who are deaf or hard of hearing and who typically use American Sign Language may utilize this accommodation when accessing audio and text-based content in the assessment. In-person sign interpretation services or direct communication of the test content in sign is not an allowable accommodation and invalidates the assessment. A sign language interpreter is allowed to sign the scripted directions from the test administration manual to the students prior to testing. Closed captioning. This accommodation is for students who are deaf or hard of hearing who typically access information presented via audio by reading words that are synchronized with the audio. This accommodation is only available in English Language Arts Session 2 Listening. Non-embedded accommodations. Abacus. This tool may be used in place of scratch paper for students who typically use this. Some students with visual impairments may use this instead of using scratch paper. Alternate response options. Some students with physical disabilities may need to use the alternate response options accommodation. Some alternate response options are external devices that must be plugged in and be compatible with the assessment delivery system. It is important to test compatibility ahead of time with the online tools training. Braille. In addition to selecting the Braille accommodation for a student in eDirect, DACs must order printed Braille tests using the Additional Materials request page in eDirect. Administrators must ensure that the test ticket has BRL next to Accommodations prior to testing. This ensures that the online test form and the Braille form have matching content for all questions. All student responses must be transcribed into the online testing system by the test administrator or other designated person using the student's test ticket. The printed test must be treated as a secure testing material. See the Test Administration Manual on the Forward Exam Resources webpage for more information on the Braille process, including test security procedures. Calculators. The only calculator that may be used on the exam for calculator items are those that fall under assistive technology devices. All other students must use the online calculator provided in the assessment. Questions about this should be directed to the Office of Student Assessment. Listening scripts. Listening scripts may be provided to test administrators working with students who are deaf or hard of hearing, who are unable to access the embedded listening passages via the embedded audio, closed captioning, or video sign language. This accommodation would be for a student who would need to lip read as the test administrator reads the listening passages aloud to the student. The decision to allow this accommodation must be based on each individual student's need and documented in a student's IEP or 504 plan. There is a special protocol for requesting the listening script accommodation. If a student requires listening scripts, the DAC must submit a request via the Listening Script Accommodation Approval Form located at the website on the slide. The test ticket must have LS next to accommodations to ensure that the online test form and the listening script have matching content for all questions. Multiplication tables. In order to qualify for use of a multiplication table, a student must have a documented disability or disorder that significantly impacts their ability to learn and perform math calculations, as evidenced by a goal on the student's IEP. Print on demand. The print on demand accommodation is intended for those extremely rare circumstances where a student's condition prevents him or her from accessing online material. The decision to allow this accommodation must be based on each individual student's need and documented in a student's IEP or 504 plan. There are some emergency circumstances in which a medical documentation may be acceptable, such as a concussion where no screen time is permitted. All responses must be entered into the student's online test by the test administrator or other designated person using the student's test ticket. The printed test must be treated as secure testing materials. There is a special protocol for requesting a print-on-demand accommodations. If students require this, the DAC must submit a request for print-on-demand accommodation approval. The form is located at the following website. Read aloud as an accommodation. The Read Aloud accommodation is only available to very few students. These are students with visual impairments who are not yet proficient in contracted Braille. This need must be documented in a student's IEP or 504 plan and have prior approval from DPI via the Read Aloud accommodation request form. Students who do not meet the criteria but require Read Aloud should use the designated support Read Aloud, including some students that have IEP or 504 plans. Read Aloud guidelines and confidentiality forms are available on the Forward Exam Accommodations and Supports webpage. Some features are mutually exclusive. This information is provided in the Accessibility Guide. Please be sure to take note of which accessibility features are mutually exclusive. The text-to-speech designated support and the Stacked Translation designated support are mutually exclusive. They cannot be used together. The computer cannot tell the English from the Spanish and will therefore try to read the Spanish as if it were English. A student needing the English text read must have the designated support of Read Aloud in English. If a student needs the Spanish read aloud, they should have the designated support of Read Aloud in Spanish. The Accessibility Guide has more information about this. Text-to-speech designated support and Read Aloud designated support are also mutually exclusive. The text-to-speech designated support is the computer voice reading the text aloud. Read Aloud is a human voice reading the text aloud. For more information on Forward Exam accessibility features, please see the Accommodations and Support webpage. All questions may be directed to the Office of Student Assessment.